All right, so this is part two to lesson two. We were disconnected on the internet, and we're still getting the hang of Google Hangouts, so we're back on. I'm going to go ahead and send this link out to everyone so that they can watch part two. Dan was finishing up looking at our preference menu. I believe we got through most of the preferences. I think probably about the only thing that we didn't get to is I am going to bring this up really quickly on my CC under preferences. There are a few things different from the one he was showing you on his laptop, but he mentioned interface. We had white, a light gray, a darker gray, and black interface. Again, I believe you should be working on a neutral gray background. Um, you went through workspaces and file handling. This is something new that came in CS6, and this is the reason to buy CS6 is the fact that you can set this right here, this little drop down menu says file saving options. I would set it to every 5 minutes, defaulted for every 10. That's just, it automatically is saving a copy of your work every 5 minutes virtually in the background. It doesn't slow anything down. You don't even know it's doing it. That way, not if, but when Photoshop crashes, you can recover to that point, at least back a few minutes from where you're at that point. The last thing is that I don't know if he got it in our last lesson, is history states. Have you ever used your history menu or your history panel to back up steps because you made a mistake? And you ever been to where you've said, oh man, if I could just get one more or two more steps, then I could undo it. And there's no more steps in that history panel. And it's because by default, it used to be only remembering the last 20 things that we had done. Well, right here, I can actually change this cache level and I can say, hey, Photoshop, remember the last 1,000 things that I do. But I probably don't want to say the last 1,000. I usually find anywhere from 50 to 100 works well for me. I usually set mine right around 50. Apart from that, I think we covered everything in that preference menu that you really need to know. All of these things, you can send us a message if there's something you don't quite understand, and we'd be happy to share it with you and make sure we cover it in an additional lesson. So I'm going to say okay. And we just wanted to quickly tonight go over what is a layer, what is a mask. I'm going to open up a new document and 5 inches by 5 inches. So we're just going to open up basically, let's actually close that. And I'm just going to go ahead and open up a sheet of paper. So I'm going to say US paper 8.5 by 11. We all know what an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper is. When it comes to layers, people have made it too difficult over the years because if you look in a book, you're going to see it'll say use a transparency layer, use a text layer. You need to add a fill layer. There's all kinds of different layers. Well, there really isn't. A layer is a layer is a layer. Do you remember overhead projectors? Do you remember when you'd go to a sales meeting and someone would put a graph on the overhead projector and there would be that graph up there and that was on a clear sheet of plastic, and then the presenter would pull out a second sheet of plastic and he'd go, hey, those are where we wanted to end the year, but drum roll, let's see how we finish the year up. And he'd lay that next sheet of clear plastic over that one, and you'd see that other graph, and he'd go, oh, we fell short, didn't we? And then he'd grab another clear sheet of plastic with something written on it. We couldn't tell, but he'd set it down over that overhead projector, and we'd go, oh, and it said something, but he laid it down over the graph. So it's kind of jumbled, and you couldn't figure out. Somebody in the back would go, excuse me, we can't read that. What would he do? He would grab that clear sheet of plastic and he would move it around. And he'd go, oh, how about over here? He'd find an empty spot and he'd go, there, it says you're the greatest sales force in the country. And I still believe in you guys, right? He'd start talking, and maybe at some point he'd go, let's forget about how we ended up the year. And he'd take away that sheet of clear plastic. So now that graph was gone. And then maybe later somebody smarted off in the back of the room and he said, do I need to pull this one out and re-put it down? And he lays it down and go, do I need to remind you how we ended the year up, right? So that's just all layers are. If someone says, I need a text layer, that's just a clear sheet of plastic that's got text on it. If they say a fill layer, that's just a clear sheet of plastic that's filled with a solid color or maybe a pattern. If they say a transparency layer, that's just a clear sheet of plastic with nothing on it. So a layer is a layer is a layer. Don't make it any more difficult than that. Here's the way I see most people when they're new to Photoshop, and many of us go years using Photoshop this way. I always like to use this example. I'm going to go ahead and grab a couple colors here. I'll grab like a nice yellow color, and for my background, let's grab something like blue. Nice, simple blue. And let's say we're working on something, and again, we'll look at a photograph here in a minute. I just want you to concrete in your mind, what is a layer? So let's grab our marquee tool. We're going to go over the tools next week. So let's say somebody came in and they said, we want to have you make us a 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper that's got a blue rectangle and a yellow circle on it. So maybe we make our rectangle and we fill it in with something like blue. Guess what I did? I just reached into my box of crayons and I just colored a blue rectangle on my white sheet of paper. If I were now to say, hey, let's grab my elliptical marquee tool, and I said, let's put a yellow circle on there. Well, and I filled that in with yellow. Guess what I just did? I grabbed my yellow crayon out of my box of crayons and I just colored right on that blue circle. Well, what happens when I now add some other pictures in there, some text in this, and suddenly someone walks in, the person I'm doing it for, and says, hey, it looks great, except for, can you put it at the top of the page? And can you make that blue red now? And we wanted it to look more like a rising sun, so like a half circle at the bottom. And you say, sure, I can do that. And when they walk away, what do? You come up here and you exit out and you say, no, I'm not going to save this. And you restart again. And you figure, well, I got a lot of time in this. I can do it quicker the second time. That's how most of us have used Photoshop. Now that you know what a layer is, let's not do it that way. Let's go right back to our starting point and let's do the exact same thing. But this time, let's not draw on our white sheet of paper. Let's just keep that nice and clean and white. And let's grab our elliptical marquee tool. And before we do anything, see where it says layers right here? Let's go down to the bottom. There's a little icon right here next to our trash can. It looks like a piece of paper with the edge folded up. If I click on that, that's going to give me a new layer. And see that layer? I see the little squares. That means it's a clear sheet of plastic. That's all you have to think of it as. There's nothing on this layer. It's blank. It's made out of glass. It's made out of plastic. Now, I could say layer up top on my options bar, and I could say layer, new layer, new layer. And there's my shortcut, Shift Control N. So I can do it with a keyboard shortcut. I can click on it, or I can just quickly come down here and click on the little icon next to the trash can, just like I did. And what I'm going to do now is grab my elliptical marquee tool, and I'm going to drag out my shape, and let's fill that in with blue. I actually have to select the layer. So we have our layer selected. So now I put that blue rectangle on its own clear sheet of plastic. Now I want to go ahead and put my yellow circle on there. I don't want to color on this clear sheet of plastic. I want to put a brand new clear sheet of plastic down. And I am going to go ahead and fill that in with yellow. And let's now put this kind of where we thought we wanted it, right there. Now, when that person walks in and they go, hey, can you put it at the top? Well, guess what? See, I have this yellow layer selected. I can grab my move tool and I can say, you mean like up here? And they say, sure. I can click on this layer and I can move it up there with it. Or I can hold down my control command on a Mac and I can select both of these layers and now I can move them together anywhere they need to be. Are you starting to see why you need to work on layers? Just for simple things like this, number one, but it gets better. So we have these two layers. Maybe like we said, they said, can you make it look like the yellow circle is behind the blue rectangle? I can do that. All I do is grab the clear sheet of plastic that the yellow circle's on, and I take it off the projector and I shove it underneath the blue one. Or I just click here, I just drag it down. See what I'm doing on my layers panel? I let it go. And now that is underneath because I've just moved that clear sheet of plastic around. See, I can drag it back up and put it over the top. So there's all kinds of neat things that we can do with layers. Doesn't have to be really difficult. If I grab my text tool and I throw some text on something, there we go. Let's change it to a color that we can actually see. Really ugly color here. I'm going to make it a little bit smaller. Let's grab our tool here and let's put it right here in the center. Notice we don't see it because it's underneath our blue rectangle. See it in our layers? It is being covered up by this blue one. I'm going to drag it up and now we can see it. Getting the point? That's all I want to do now. Just quickly let you see what is a layer. So that's all a layer is. It's a clear sheet of plastic. Right now, we are looking at 4 layers. We're looking at a background layer, a yellow circle, a blue rectangle, some text. You should get in your habit of naming your layers. We'll get into that later, but I can just double click right there on the word and I could call this something like yellow. Let's double click on this one. Let's call this blue. There we go. This actually says text. If it's because it's saying whatever it says inside there. If I change the text to say words, then it would say the T and then it would say words. So get in that habit because many times when we work on a Photoshop document, we'll have 30, 40 layers on something and it's really hard to go back through and find it. But it's much easier when you go, I need the blue rectangle and all I do is find the name of that layer and it makes it easy to find. So that's a layer. Let's move on to what is a mask. Well, I'm going to go ahead and see the little eyeball right here. If I hit this eyeball, that turns that layer off. It doesn't delete it. It just says, don't let me see it right now. I'm going to drag my yellow circle back up to the top and let's move it over here. And again, these are all things not necessarily how we would do things. I just want to make it really simple. Let's put a layer mask on. So how would we put a mask on? Well, I could say layer mask, and I have a couple options here, which I'll talk about in a minute. Or I can, under my layers panel, go down to the bottom. Remember the trash can, and there's my new layer icon. Well, over here I have a rectangle that has it's a black rectangle with a circle in the middle. That's my add a layer mask. So if I click on that, I'm going to get a layer mask. See this little white box over here? This white box is not just, this isn't just an icon. This is a mask that is filled with white paint. Why is it filled with white paint? Well, when we work with masks, there's only 2 colors you need to know. You need to know black and white. You don't even have to write it down or really remember it because Photoshop really only lets you work with 2 colors. Notice if you watch my cursor right here, if I click on the yellow circle, notice what happens to my colors on the left-hand side. See how it's blue and yellow here? Keep your eye on the blue and yellow. When I click on the mask, see Photoshop turns to black and white because it says, oh, you're working on a mask? Well, all you need is black and white. I'm going to grab a brush and I have a white mask. So I am going to grab a black brush. So anywhere now that I paint black paint, see right over here, down here on my layer, on my mask, see the black paint? Anywhere I put black paint, I'm going to make that area invisible. I'm going to mask it out. But guess, this is what's great. Maybe you're looking at that going, I can do that with an eraser tool. Yeah, but with an eraser tool, you can't switch it to white. And now anywhere I paint white, it's going to come back. So think of your mask tool as an eraser tool that I'm going to use the keyboard shortcut, which is X. Every time I hit X, which is the same as clicking down here on this little 2-way arrow, it switches foreground and background. So I'll hit X and I'll paint with black. I'll hit X and now I can paint with white and bring it back. I hit X, I can take things away. I hit X and now I'm painting with white. So anywhere you paint white, you're going to see what's on the layer. Anywhere you paint with black, you're not going to see what's on that layer. It's not any more difficult than that. That's what a layer is. That's what a mask is. If you understand layers and masks and selections, there's almost nothing you can't do in Photoshop. Those are those three foundational blocks that you must understand and is no more difficult than how we explained it tonight. Dan, is there anything you want to add to masks or to layers?
As far as their mask layers, I think everything's pretty good there. The only when you went over the layers, I'm sure you'll go
I don't know if you're cutting out or I'm cutting out.
versus somewhat versus a standard layer, a fill layer. Now, an adjustment layer. Are you going to go over that in the next?
We will. We'll get to adjustment layers. I
Oh,
just want them to understand what is a mask, what is a layer,
all
just the generalist concepts before we move forward. Um, and the things that Dan's talking about, they're not necessarily new types of, they're just a new way of looking at layers. So just keep in your mind, these are clear sheets of plastic. And then now I have this magic mask that I can put on. And anywhere I paint black, I can make whatever's on that layer disappear. And anywhere I paint white, I can make it come back. So I'm just masking it, I'm hiding it. So that's just the words you need to remember, masking and hiding. One of the things we will get to is when we're working with layers, some of the great things we can do with layers is notice up top here it says opacity 100%. That's how see-through that layer is. So I actually can lower the opacity and make that a little bit more see-through. I'll move that down so you can see it there that we're doing. And see if I bring it back up, it gets less see-through, so less opaque. I can take it all the way down to 0 where it's invisible and then just slowly start bringing it back up. So, but we'll get to opacity. Hopefully all of this makes sense. It should. Again, foundational parts of Photoshop. You need to understand what a layer is. You need to understand what a mask is. Our next lesson, we're going to start working through the toolbar. We're going to take turns throughout showing you what all of the tools do. They're not as difficult as you think. Again, I said this the first time that we had done a class like this. There's no experts in Photoshop. There's just people who know where the tools are hidden. So we're going to kind of demystify a lot of Photoshop for you. There's a lot of tools in there that are just hangers on, tools that Photoshop probably or Adobe could have gotten rid of. It's just, people still use them in their workflow, so they don't quite want to get rid of them. And, we'll talk about things we like, things we don't like, and show you how you make selections, how you make things disappear, how you make things come back, duplicating, all kinds of things. So look forward to that next lesson, and then we'll really dive into working with layers and then working with selections. How do we select things? How do we cut things out of an image so it doesn't look like we made a scissored out ransom note when we try to cut somebody out of one picture and move them into another? Really quickly, I had this set up. Now that you're understanding what layers and masks are, I'm going to open up my recent files here. Might take a second. There we go. And I think I had, go ahead and open it this way. Open, because I've opened a number of things since then. I thought I had it quite ready for me. So I made a file here called Hangout and called Lesson 2. We have the small one, and then we have her husband. So we're going to go ahead and open this. And again, you might look at what I had just done and go, that all makes sense, but I don't use shapes. I don't use layers or anything like that. Well, here's the reason you use things like masks. Again, this isn't a lesson on how to do things. I just want to quickly, help you understand, solidify this new, what is a mask, what is a layer. So I'm just going to grab one of my tools here and I'm going to quickly select out my friend Victoria out of this image. Gonna let Photoshop catch up here. There we go. Let's drag this down a little bit more. Again, I'm not going to worry about doing a great job about this. Just trying to quickly let you see why you would do this. Go. Let's take out the arm there. Look what happens on this background. Now that I have this marching ant selection, I've selected an area. I'm going to hit my mask icon, and something's going to happen. It's going to happen wrong, and I want it to happen wrong. Well, no, actually, I did select it correctly this time. You notice the background went away and Victoria stayed there. Well, if I double click on my mask and bring up my properties panel for my mask, I have a little button here called invert. See how she on the mask is painted white? And there we go. I can actually hold down my Alt key and click on my mask and you can see the mask. I'll hold down Alt and I'll turn it off here. Notice she's white and the background is black. If I hit invert, see now the background comes back and she disappears. See how black and white, if I invert it again, you can see it. Watch down here on my mask. You can start seeing black and white switching places. And that's just because anywhere I paint black, it's going to disappear. Anything that I have painted white, I'm going to see. Let's go ahead and I'm just going to right click on there and say delete the layer mask. I had a picture here of her husband, and I'm going to drag him in there really quick. And I'm just going to drag and drop. Let's put him right here. Right now, without doing anything, not giving her any extra space, he's in front of her, at least so it looks. Let's use our mask to put him behind her. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put a mask on Matt right now by adding a layer mask. And again, this isn't necessarily the right way to do it. I just want you to see this. I'm going to use a black brush because I have a white mask. And anywhere I paint, he's going to disappear. So I'm going to make him look like he's behind her. So we're just going to zoom in here. I'm going to grab the brush. I'm going to hit X so that I can using white right now. And again, these are not the right tools. These are not the way that I would do it. I just quickly want to show you the possibilities of a mask, why you need to be using a mask. If I use the eraser tool, what I'm actually doing is I'm throwing pixels away. It doesn't matter if I save this as a Photoshop file, if I save it as any other kind of file. If I throw the pixels away, they are gone forever. I can't bring them back. So with a mask, I can save this out as long as I save as a Photoshop file, and I can open this up a month from now and go, oh my goodness, I messed up on Matt, and I can bring that part of him back just simply because of the mask. So now it looks like Matt's behind his wife. If I hold down my shift key and I click on the mask, it'll turn it off. So now we can see the mask is turned off. So he's in front of her. Now the mask is on. Now he's behind her. And that's simply because I am hiding him. I am hiding parts of Matt from his wife. Sounds kind of funny. So if I hold down my Alt key once again, I can show you there's my mask. See, there's some spots that I missed there that I probably would want to take care of. But are you getting the picture of why we use masks? One of the big reasons we use masks is because the problems that we make inside of Photoshop are things like this. We go to print it and we start realizing that, uh-oh, I messed up and I cut off part of her shoulder. If I did this on its own layer and I used an eraser tool, I'm kind of in trouble. I have to rebuild that. I have to cut her back out, her shoulder. I got to do a lot of work. But if it's a mask, all I have to do is click on that mask and use a black brush and just paint it back in and say, you know what, just give me a couple minutes. I got to fix this. And I can just kind of go in there again, not the tools I'd be using, not the brush. I wouldn't be painting right now with my mouse. I would be using my tablet to do this so that I would be a little more accurate. But that's the reason, again, that you're using layers. That's the reason you're using masks. We look forward to sharing with you next time the toolbar and looking at all the different tools. Is there anything you'd like to add before we go, Dan?
Well, not that I can think of. I think everything went well, and yeah, I'm pretty excited about the next class. Show a lot of neat things. We can finally get into the fun things.
Okay. All right. So next time we'll give you some notice, and when our next class is available, we're going to go through that toolbar, and hopefully we won't have any interruptions with internet, and we won't have to do it in two parts. So thank you for watching, and we apologize for any inconvenience. Thank you.